All right, I'm broadcasting now.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to our, what is this? Which one is this? Third?
Yep, this is our
Okay, third Global Learning, Office of Global Learning Initiatives partnered event. So thank you all for joining us today. As you know, if you've participated in these events before, that our program is presented by the Sea Level Solutions Center and the Institute of Environment and the Department of Journalism and Media at Florida International University. And so our program is also made possible from a grant, by a grant from the Miami-Dade County Environmental Education Program. And the purpose is to increase awareness and knowledge about environmental issues and enhance critical thinking and problem solving to make informed decisions and take responsible actions. So we've got a cool program for you today on environmental sustainability. Today we're going to focus on water resources. And we're going to talk a little bit about some of the cool research that's going on around FIU to support water sustainability in Miami and in Southeast Florida. So with that, right, I think we did this one. Oh, and my name is Tiffany Troxler. I'm a Director of Science at the Sea Level Solutions Center in the Institute of Environment and an associate professor in the Department of Earth and Environment. So let's launch into the quality of life poll. Who's doing that?
That's me. Hi everyone, this is Maria del Mar. It's nice to join you guys again. So let's go ahead and get you all started with our first quality of life poll. The first question you should be seeing on your screen is, I am a non-student, or B, student. Some of these questions, once you select on your answer choice, then you'll be able to scroll all the way down and you'll be able to see the 6 questions we'll be going over today. Some of these questions are single choice and some others are multiple choice, so feel free to select the ones that are right for you. The second question you should be seeing on your screen is, the type of business where I work is the private sector, government, nonprofit, self-employed, or maybe if you're not working, you can click on that. The third question we see here is, what are the 3 most important things that determine your quality of life? This is a multiple choice question, so select all that apply to you. Some of the options are health, family and friends, happiness, freedom, learning and education, religion, being outdoors, connecting with nature, work-life balance, safety or security, or a good pay or job. The fourth question you should be seeing right now is, what are the 3 most important concerns you have about sea level rise and flooding? And this is also a multiple choice, so you can select a couple answers here. The first answer could be, applying science to make good decisions to address these issues, increasing threats from storm surge, impacts to property or property value, impacts on community, friends and family, lack of awareness and no action to address it, impacts to natural habitats and wildlife, exacerbation on social inequities, relocation, water contamination and public health impacts, and the last option is impacts to infrastructure. You're gonna have a couple minutes to do this, so take your time. I see 25% of you have voted. If we can increase that number by 70%, that would be wonderful. The 5th question I see is, what are the 3 most important concerns you have about other impacts of climate change? We have increased heat and extreme heat, more intense storms, applying science to make good decisions to address these issues, impacts to property or property value, impacts on community, friends and family, impacts to nature, habitat and wildlife, impacts on public health, increase in threats from storm surge, lack of awareness and no action to address it, exacerbation of social inequities, and that would be the last one.
And also, even if you've taken the poll before, please retake it.
Yes, thanks, Tiffany. And the sixth question you should be seeing right now is, what do you think are the 3 highest priority initiatives or actions that can be done to reduce the impacts of climate change and improve your quality of life? This is also a multiple choice, so feel free to select as many as you like. Increase use of renewable energy, use bonds or small increase in taxes to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and finance projects to reduce climate change impacts. Increase city and community initiatives to support household activities like composting, eating less meat, planting more trees. Elevate buildings and other infrastructures, update codes, planning, and infrastructure based on best available science, and increase city or community green infrastructure initiatives like tree planting, vegetating swells, and increase restoration of coastal habitats, support low wealth communities, increase community awareness and education, and the last 2 are move to a lower risk neighborhood where codes have been updated based on best available science, improved stormwater flood management, and improved water management. So I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll right now. I do appreciate all of you who took the time to answer. And let's take a quick look at where our team is looking at. All right, so most of you are students, but we do also have non-students. The type of business, most of you are not working or working government or nonprofits. Most of you care about health, happiness, and friends and family. And then if we go down, what are the 3 most important concerns you have about sea level rise? We have impacts on natural habitat and wildlife, lack of awareness and no action to address it, and applying science to make good decisions. And the 5th one, we have the 3 most important concerns you have about other impacts of climate change is the increased heat and extreme heat, impacts on community and friends and family. And lastly, we have, what do you think are the 3 highest priority initiatives and actions that can reduce the impacts of climate change and improve your quality of life? It's increased use of renewable energy, increased city and community initiatives that support household activities like composting, eating less meat, and planting more trees. So with that being said, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing the poll.
All right, thank you very much. So now we're going to go into a presentation that Madi, a Bachelor of Arts sustainability candidate in our Earth and Environment Department, is going to talk about water resources in Miami.
Thank you. So basically, I want to talk to you about where our water comes from, what are some of the challenges that we're currently facing, and why is it important to us? So why is water important to Florida and Miami-Dade citizens? Well, 90% of Florida drinking water comes from underground aquifers. They supply more than 8 billion gallons of water each day, and we're pretty lucky to have these aquifers because they make our drinking water relatively inexpensive. We depend on the health and good water quality for our lifestyle, our economy, the ecology here in Miami. So that being able to go fishing, to recreate at the beaches, this attracts tourism and hopefully kayaking without any dead fish around us. So if we can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So in Miami-Dade County, the water resources, we can take a look at this natural flow. So I'm gonna quickly just go over it. As we know, as the sun warms up our oceans and surface water, it causes our water to evaporate, essentially condensing into clouds, and this travels all over our city until it precipitates. When rainwater then replenishes our lakes, our rivers, and most importantly, our Biscayne aquifer with fresh water. And deeper down, you can see in the graph that there is the Florida aquifer. So it's the groundwater Florida aquifer. This one moves slowly across the state, and it's usually too salty to drink without further treatment. So in Miami-Dade, we would draw our drinking water via wells from the Biscayne aquifer. These are usually 60 to 80 feet deep, and it is supplemented by a small amount from the deeper Florida aquifer. And then the Everglades, they help recharge the Biscayne aquifer and sustain the water supply of the lower East Coast. And our aquifers are especially susceptible to climate change, contamination, and saltwater intrusion from sea level rise because of its permeable layer of sand and its porous limestone rock geology underneath. So here on the right-hand side, you can see a little bit of that saltwater intrusion, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in this presentation. Next slide, please. And so that leads me to my next point, climate change. So what do we know? We know that the release of greenhouse gases are high and they're rising from a variety of practices such as industrial agriculture, methane emissions from landfills, coal plants and mining, and essentially the CO2 emissions from burning fossil fuels. So the three graphs from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change show the first one is the rising concentrations of primary greenhouse gas carbon dioxide in the Earth atmosphere over the years, the impact of this increase in greenhouse gases, which radiates heat back from our atmosphere on the temperatures of the ocean, and where most heat coming to the Earth is absorbed by the ocean. And so this is impacting in thermal expansion of the ocean and the melting of land-based ice on sea level and the ocean. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So essentially, scientists have concluded from this data that the greenhouse gases, like I said, they're high and rising, they're causing our oceans to get warmer, and this is also acidifying the ocean because of the amount of CO2 levels, and it's lowering the pH of our ocean, disturbing also our coral reefs and causing sea levels to rise. But something important to know is that the greenhouse effect it's a natural occurring thing. The problem is when we have this excess of gases like carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and water vapor, among others. They start, of course, trapping more heat and essentially creating a thicker blanket, which causes the global temperatures to rise. And so the Paris Agreement of 2015 set the global target to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, higher than the pre-industrial levels, in order to avoid potential catastrophic climate impacts. So let's go ahead and take a look at the sea level rise projections that we have.
The sea level rise projections?
I have some sea level rise projections.
What slide are you seeing right now?
Slide 10.
Okay, good.
Okay, great. That's the one. So what we see here in this graph is the global temperature. If it were to rise 2 degrees Celsius by 2100, we can see the water is rising, essentially covering most of South Florida. And what if the temperature were to rise to 4 degrees Celsius? Then, of course, we're going to find a lot more flooding. And so by 2040, sea level it's projected to rise 10 to 17 inches above the 2000 mean sea level, and 21 to 54 inches by 2070. And so this is within our lifetime that we're going to be seeing these changes. Next slide, please, which is the South Florida hydrology has also changed. So something that I find to be very interesting is the historic flow of Florida's natural water. So essentially, with the creation of canals to control flooding and to allow developing here in South Florida, we're changing the current flow. And so natural freshwater replaces by point sources discharges from canals. And currently the Everglades is not getting enough clean fresh water. Next slide, please. And so sea level rise and population growth is a threat to our urban water supply, because sometimes the aquifers cannot replenish as fast as we may be pumping the water. And we're also being presented with the saltwater intrusion. So of course our drinking water availability it's lowering because of also climate change. And another interesting thing that we're currently facing is nutrient pollution. So nutrient pollution is a process where too many nutrients, mainly nitrogen and phosphorus, are added to our bodies of water. These are usually from excessive use of fertilizers, and these can cause algae blooms. So nutrient pollution can also create smells in the water, reduce the water clarity, lower the oxygen levels in our water, which is essentially what happened with the fish kill in the Biscayne Bay. And nutrient pollution can essentially disrupt businesses, property values, recreate the creational axis, and result to be hazardous to our public health. So if we can go to the next slide. And so here on the right-hand side.
One more minute.
Awesome. Yeah, so here on the right-hand side is just a quick view of how our water flows. The most important thing to take out of this is that our storm drains goes directly into our waterways. They can go into the canals, then into the bay, and then into the ocean. So whatever contaminants rainwater picks up on the street, they can essentially, contaminate our water resources. And so it's important to know that Miami's urban water is managed, and we have a septic, we have a sewer, we have water storm systems in addition to our flood management. And so when we have sea level rise, we have our water tables rising. And so if you are on septic, for example, then it doesn't allow your septic system to work as properly as it should. Therefore, it can create some contamination there. And so due to high population growth and development and our agricultural needs, we are presented with our water quality challenges. So something that we can do is most people use too much fertilizer, which means there's an excess, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So we can support the fertilizer ordinance that is currently going on. So we have some in our counties and most municipalities, but we can definitely hopefully push that. So it's not a ban on fertilizers, it's just how to use fertilizers so it's not so detrimental to our environment. So some of the things we can do is limit the amount of fertilizers applied. We can promote a slow release fertilizer to prevent large release of nitrogen. We can use a 0% phosphorus fertilizer mix, and do not apply fertilizers in summer during heavy rains and storms, because essentially so much water, it doesn't allow the fertilizers to get attached to the soils. And so when it rains and we have excess, and if you're using your sprinkles, then you can, the water just ends up running into the canals with all these nutrients and so on. So that's pretty much my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madi. All right, so now we're going to launch into our roundtable on FIU graduate research. So I'm going to stop sharing. And we have, this says, so we have Nick Castillo presenting first. You should be able to grab the screen share if you like.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me do that quickly. I do have a few slides here. Okay. And share screen. And
we do have the request to put your presentations in presentation mode. That way it could be full screen for the audience.
Okay. Can you guys see that? Full screen?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, perfect. Yeah, so my name's Nick Castillo. I'm a PhD student here at Florida International University's Department of Earth and Environment. My advisor is Dr. Rehage, and my research focuses on examining the threat of pharmaceutical contaminants to South Florida, and I specifically look at bonefish, and I'm looking from Biscayne Bay all the way south through Key West. And it's nice that I'm going after your presentation, Emery, because I really enjoyed your connection as to what is going on land really relates to our water resources in the coast. And what's interesting is like the pharmaceutical contaminant aspect don't necessarily connect that to our marine resources. Drugs, pharmaceuticals, we take them ourselves to promote our own health, but after that, after you take it, the thought kind of leaves our mind there as to what's happening. Now I'm just gonna move forward here. Now in South Florida, as we know, in Miami-Dade County, our population has been growing exponentially. So with a large population, we have a lot of people taking pharmaceuticals, taking drugs every single day in our county. And as we mentioned here in our previous presentation there with septic and sewer, after a person takes a pharmaceutical, a drug, your body utilizes a certain percentage of it, and then the remainder is excreted. And whether that be down a toilet or if it ends up in our landfills or in our septic tanks, it has the potential to leach into our marine environment. And the other aspect that's interesting and maybe not necessarily immediately thought of is that our wastewater treatment plants in Miami-Dade County, they don't remove for pharmaceutical contaminants. So once you take it, like I said, a certain percentage is excreted and removed, and is not removed from wastewater treatment, so it can enter our marine environment in its active form. And a lot of these pharmaceutical contaminants, they can remain in the marine environment for quite a long time. So essentially anything there in the water can get exposed to that pharmaceutical. And that even gets compounded a little bit where a drug is designed in a human's body to act on specific receptors. You want your anti-anxiety medication to relieve those symptoms. You don't want it to affect anything else. So that means they affect specific sites in the body: anti-anxiety, serotonin receptors, anti-inflammatory, the other aspects of your body. And that completely relates to fish as well. So fish in the marine environment, when they're exposed to these pharmaceutical contaminants, they have the same effects. So the pharmaceutical exposure is in the water, it's affecting our fish, and it can have a compounding ecological ecosystem-wide effect. Now, as I mentioned, I'm studying bonefish and drugs. What happens when they're exposed, just like any other fish, behavioral alterations can occur. What's interesting is, like, we have our pharmaceutical contaminants, and they're not necessarily tested in regularity for our water quality parameters. It's not like monitoring for the chlorophyll levels, for example, and it doesn't have a specific aspect because these behavioral alterations are very minute, and it doesn't necessarily involve something that could cause death. So our EPA regulations aren't there. Now, when a fish's behavior changes, like a bonefish that inhabits coastal environments and has a specific spawning route, and if the behavior is altered by, let's say, a psychoactive pharmaceutical that changes the anxiety levels, so that same thing happens to fish, where they might become more bold, they might be less able to evade predators. So this effect can have a ripple throughout the ecosystem. And with my model species being bonefish, looking at how potential exposure to pharmaceutical contaminants has played a role in a decline in the bonefish population that we've seen here in Miami-Dade County. Now, just a general overview is what I'm doing. We catch bonefish and sample them for blood plasma, and then we analyze that blood plasma for pharmaceutical contaminants. And we're doing this throughout Biscayne Bay and through South Florida along the coast to see what we take, the drugs that we take, how do they enter the water, to what extent are they exposed to fish, and how does that potentially affect their population moving forward. And I hope that was an interesting little introduction into pharmaceutical ecotoxicological study here in South Florida, and the connections to the drugs we take, how they relate to our water resources.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nick. Can we go to Lauren DeVito?
Okay, let me stop your sharing, Nick. Okay.
Oh, sorry about that.
No, you're okay. There we go. Okay. Okay. Sorry, I always forget how to put it in play mode.
There you go.
Yeah.
Almost there.
Oh, is
Next
it
to
there?
the 4 squares.
Okay, next to the 4 squares. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
That's great. There we go. Okay, cool. Hi, guys. My name is Lauren DeVito. I'm a new PhD student in the Wetland Research Ecosystems Lab, which is headed by Dr. Troxler at Florida International University. So I'm going to talk to you today a little bit about water quality and seagrass decline in the Biscayne Bay. So since 2002, there's been a known loss of about 64% of the seagrass populations in Biscayne Bay. So using a data set from the Division of Environmental Resource Management, we're using their water quality data set to try to understand the story behind the decline in seagrass populations in the bay using water quality parameters such as trypton, which is basically just general particulate matter, total nitrogen, phosphorus, dissolved oxygen, and dissolved organic matter. So similar studies have previously linked nutrient loading to the cause of a lot of the seagrass die-offs in the Biscayne Bay. And so we're just trying to sort of elucidate more of that story and see what's going on with some more recent die-offs. And so this figure that I have here is just for you to get an idea of where the data's come from and where our stations exist for this data. Oh, and so our driving research questions are: how does water quality influence light attenuation in Biscayne Bay? And can we link the variations in water quality constituents to changes in seagrass vitality? So I'm in the very early stages of our analysis. So I just want to show you a little bit of what the data looks like so far. So here we can see from a 10-year data set that the trypton data peaks in late 2014 and again in 2016. And we also noticed that at these stations that I showed you in the previous slide, the seagrass has started, there's been notable decline between 2014 and 2015 with die-offs continuing through the end of the decade. So we're in the very early stages, but we're hoping to use this data set to do some regression analysis and try to link some of the water quality changes to any variations in seagrass populations. We're also hoping to model light attenuation in the water column to determine if water quality conditions are hostile to light, and thus that prevents seagrass populations from photosynthesizing. And trypton is usually a really great indicator of whether there's light attenuation in the water column. So our hope is generally to sort of again elucidate the story of what it looks like for these seagrass communities in the Biscayne Bay, and then hopefully if our data shows anything interesting or makes a case for a review of certain threshold limitations or things of that nature, we can sort of work with local constituents to make those changes happen. And so that's it for me.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you so much. Marvelous, can we go to you now?
I hope you're doing well, learning a lot about water sources. I'm going to share you just a really quick presentation. So my name is Marvelous.
I think, does everybody, can you hear her correctly, Maddie?
Oh, I hear something funny.
Yeah, is your mic okay? You were just fine earlier. I'm not sure what's going on. Do you want to try your mic again?
Hello?
Should we give Marvelous a couple of minutes? And then perhaps do another presentation in the meantime?
Yeah, we can do that. Lucas, we'll come back to you, Marvelous.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yeah. Are you ready then?
Oh.
Okay, go ahead then.
Technical difficulties there.
No problem.
There you go. So, hi everybody. My name is Marvelous Garriga, and I'm a CRASTA and Year Access Around Fellow under Dr. Tiffany Trexler, focused on quantifying the water quality regulation capacity of mangrove urban ecological infrastructure using a laboratory raceway and flow-through flume field experiments in order to decrease nutrient pollution effects in Biscayne Bay. Oh, and sorry, that was this slide. So that's the introduction slide, and I'm just going to quickly introduce to you why we need more green adaptations versus the gray seawalls or riprap areas that we currently have. So on the first, on the left, I'm trying to represent to you a dissertation goals that's trying to encompass the coastline and trying to follow an urbanization gradient between the North Bay, which is highly urbanized, and then the low of Biscayne Bay, which is less urbanized, and we start going into Biscayne National Park with larger mangroves, more established forests, so we can make comparisons between the urban, smaller patches of urban mangroves and their contribution to water quality regulation in the bay, compared to those very good established forests in the natural areas. And we're going to use smart hybrid infrastructure to armor our coastlines and promote natural functions so that seawalls and gray infrastructures will not be used some more in the near future. So in this picture that we have on the right, this stormwater outfall, we'll be able to use mangrove ecological infrastructure to try to remediate the sources of nutrient pollution in the bay. So with experimenting with known ecosystem process variables to determine nutrient uptake and water quality regulation capacity of this ecological infrastructure, and also other water quality organisms that help to bioregulate this water quality regulation capacity, we're going to try to model these variables and quantify these contributions to the ecosystem and to our urban areas, so that we can particularly try to use visualization tools to show you how we can use the systems to contribute in our urban areas and in our city. And you can also help conserve our water resources if you try to keep some trash away from our waterways so that we can keep Biscayne Bay clean. And thank you so much for our talk. And that's it for me.
Excellent. Thank you, Marvelous. Okay, Lucas, you're up.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. All right. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Lucas Lamb-Watton. I'm also a PhD student working with Dr. Tiffany Troxler, and
Hey,
I'm excited
sorry
to...
Sorry to interrupt. Can you hit that display settings thing at the top of your, can you see that?
Oh, this? Wait.
It's just in that presenter mode so that instead of showing all the slides. Yes,
Oh, I see.
at the top where it
Oh,
says,
it's switched. Oh, I see.
yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Cool.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, as I was saying, sorry. I'm excited to give a quick intro to some of the research I've been doing. Here in South Florida, we really have a big problem, sea level rise. In fact, some may argue that is the biggest problem South Florida will ever really collectively face, as it threatens the actual existence of South Florida. Now, when I say sea level rise, I'm sure this elicits thoughts of submerged beaches, flooded streets, water at your doorsteps, and also based on some of those polling results from earlier, the impacts that are going to occur to our natural environments, such as the coastal Everglades. So as the ocean rises, coastal wetlands can see deeper surface water depths, but they also can get saltier as ocean water percolates inland below ground through the porous limestone bedrock through a process known as saltwater intrusion. As this ocean rises, or as the ocean moves further inland, this saltwater intrudes into communities that are not well adapted to it, in some cases driving rapid degradation of certain ecosystems through processes such as peat collapse, which happens to be the focus of my research. So I study peat collapse in coastal sawgrass peat marshes, an ecosystem found across the coastal Everglades. In this ecosystem, sawgrass can be very productive with growing dense clusters of leaves above ground, as well as having extensive below ground root systems, with this organic material being the primary driver of peat soil growth and maintenance. So through extensive experimental research, we've identified that sawgrass doesn't care too much for salt. In fact, its lateral root network actually begins to break down when subjected to saltier conditions, leading to rapid losses in soil elevation or peat collapse, as that root system, in a way similar to our skeletons supporting our bodies, really provides a lot of the support and strength and stability to that soil, with the ultimate result of this process being a conversion of sawgrass marsh to open water ponds. So my research focuses on studying peat collapse in its natural environment from the scale of a single ecosystem to that of the entire coastal landscape, in order to generate data that maybe help us actually understand the vulnerability of sawgrass peat marshes across the coastal Everglades landscape. So, and the importance of this research is really underscored by the high rates of projected sea level rise for South Florida, with median estimates of 21 inches by 2070. The natural response of coastal Everglades wetlands to sea level rise is to transgress or move inland, as mangrove forests, the most seaward community lining our coastline, are much better adapted to higher salinity conditions, which allows them to more or less track sea level and move inland and take over marshes as they go. But if these inland marshes all collapse prior to mangrove establishment and colonization, our coastline will undergo a much more dramatic and radical transformation. Thus, the overarching goal of my research is really just to provide data to water managers and policymakers that will aid in the fight for getting more money for Everglades restoration. Because by sending more water south underneath Miami Trail and into Everglades National Park, we kind of keep the pressure on the ocean, limiting saltwater intrusion, and provide a better opportunity for coastal wetlands to be sustained to the future. Thank you. That's it.
Super. Thank you, Luke. Now we have IK.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen now. Okay, can everyone see it? Yes, I
Yes,
think
thank
so. Okay. Yes, hello everyone. My name is Ike. I'm a PhD candidate in the Department of Earth and Environment, and my lab is the Freshwater Biogeochemistry Lab. I'm also a TA, by the way, and who can guess the name of the course I teach, the lab I teach? I'll help you out. It's water resources. So I'm actually in the right place.
Yay.
Yes. Who knows? Maybe some of my students are here, you know. Okay, so I'm really excited, and my research is looking at the relationship between flow, that's water quantity, and water quality in South Florida. Now, especially in terms of nutrient loads, because we've had a history of a lot of nutrients in our system, and so that's what I'm talking on. So I'll go to my first slide. So looking at the canals, right? So we talked a little about the canals in the first presentation, and so South Florida is very unique in the sense that we do not have natural rivers. Like we don't have, actual rivers. What we have is this big wetland that we drained, right? And so we put canals so that we could drain the wetlands to use for agriculture and for development and a lot of things, right? And so we have this very highly managed man-made system, and it's taken a lot to try to manage it correctly so that we meet the needs of South Florida, right? So South Florida has a lot of competing needs. We need to sustain agriculture, we need to sustain urban development, we need to sustain our groundwater resources, we need to sustain our wetland resources, right? And so there's this complexity involved in managing our resources, our limited water resource, or limited freshwater resource, I would say, to meet all these different needs. And so we use canals to meet our needs, right? So canals flow water, distribute water throughout South Florida. But then the problem is some of these canals have received, a lot of pollution from the lands that they drain. So for instance, you can have a lot of agricultural discharge from the agricultural fields, carrying phosphorus, carrying nitrogen, and what have you. And some of these things are transported downstream quickly because these canals are very fast. They are, they're not natural, so they're pumped and they're managed. And so you can have quick export of constituents and elements and nutrients and pollutants from the watersheds, into the bay, into the lakes, or into the Everglades, right? And so it's a big problem. And you would have known it last month or 2 months ago when we had this big crisis with fish kills, right? And so a lot of this is coming from inland sources. So our sewage systems, our nutrients are coming from the terrestrial, being shunted through these canals and causing havoc in the bay and the ocean, okay? And so this has consequences, lack of recreation, lack of biodiversity, depletion of oxygen, eutrophication, harmful algal blooms, and fish kills, okay? So my research is looking at how can we combat some of these problems, So one of the main problems is that we have a very good monitoring network here in South Florida. So we have the district, we have Durham, we have Miami-Dade, we have a lot of people doing water quality measurements, but the scale at which we measure or we monitor is sometimes coarse. So, in orders of bi-weekly to monthly. And so you tend to miss a lot of the opportunities to understand some of these pollutants that they are being shunted through these canals, right? And so, and it's not easy because it's difficult to monitor, especially for nutrients that relies on wet chemistry. The technology is expensive and it takes a lot of human capital as well. And so how can we combat this problem? This is where my research comes in. So I'm looking at developing, affordable surrogate measurements for some of these nutrients, right? And so things like flow, things like total suspended solids, these are easily measured And this can, with the right calibrations, can be used as proxies for some of these nutrients, right? So using things like flow dynamics, so discharge, velocity, water level, total suspended solids, using acoustic sensors. So some of these devices that you use to give you high frequency measurements of discharge, of velocity, can also be used to estimate suspended solids. And so with the right calibrations, you can use them as proxies for nutrients. And with that, you can create models to sort of predict your behavior and your loads of nutrients in canals that can help you to manage them properly. And so you can have concentration discharge relationships and load apportionment models to give you a sense of, oh, so if I have this amount of discharge, then this is the amount of, let's say, phosphorus I expect to see being exported. And so that is where my research is going. And thank you for your time.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, let's go to some questions from the audience. Yes, great job, guys. Do we have any in the chat, just in case?
I do not that I saw.
Okay, so we have one question. What can we do to help? Feel free to chime in. Anyone want to feel very enthusiastic? What can we do to help in terms of water sustainability in Miami? Nick?
Okay, so what I would say to that is to think about what our actions, like the main message that we had from the first two presentations, what actions do we have on land that affect our marine ecosystems and our water resources? And I think to answer that question very bluntly is everything. So we need to keep in mind that everything we do has an impact. And here in Miami-Dade, with our water resources and our marine environment right there in our backyard, it has an effect. So the fertilizers, myself with the pharmaceuticals, and really with every presentation we saw here, there's something we do in our day-to-day lives that does it, that can have an impact.
So be aware of our behaviors.
Yeah, be aware of the behaviors, absolutely. That some small ones that you might not necessarily realize have an impact actually do.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a quick comment? I'll watch if you unmute yourself, I'll call you. But if you don't, then I'll move to another question.
I guess I would say also share the message with your friends and family. That way we can extend our knowledge and invite others to keep on investigating and like finding out what's actually harmful to our environment. It's always a learning process. It's a fun one. Once you dive into it, it gets pretty interesting. So I would encourage to continue educating yourself on that. I would say support your local organizations, get involved. They're constantly needing either volunteers or somebody to support them at events. Even webinars, truly. So I would say get involved with them, get involved in politics. You'll be surprised how much you can actually do with your local politics and when it comes in terms of the environment. And do best management practices when you're shopping. Try to be the most sustainable as possible. Try to be the less wasteful as possible. And then think of how the natural systems work and how, essentially your behavior. So something that I like a lot is essentially composting. So if you can participate in composting with your food scraps, do it. If you don't want to compost at home, that's totally fine, but you can drop off maybe those food scraps at a community site and they'll take them for you.
Thank you. I've got a good one here that just came through. How do you envision that the results of your research will inform the situation in a way that drives change? Is that Nick? You want to answer again? Go for it.
I'll give a quick one and then let someone else chime in there. So at least just for my research, that was the main goal from the very beginning. My funders are Bonefish Tarpon Trust, and the main mission of their organization is actionable science. So talking about pharmaceuticals and fish, we're studying a fish that has a very important economic and cultural impact here in Miami-Dade County and just South Florida in general. So if we show that these important fish that actually do have a lot of value are being affected, and not necessarily even just negatively by pharmaceuticals and everything we're putting in the water, then that's a piece of information that is added to the dialogue that helps support important change. Now, the most relevant thing would be, let's say, wastewater treatment changes and septic infrastructure in relation to my project. So the idea being, yeah, the result ultimately would be a piece of the dialogue to move things forward.
Great. I also heard a couple of presentations in addition to your own talk about what those, how our research is connecting to potential actions. I think both Luke and Marbellis and Ike also mentioned those things. Do you guys want to recap quickly how you envision the results of your research to drive change? Luke, you want to go?
Yeah, I'll go.
For it.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned at the end of my brief talk, it's really just for me, for my research, it's just about Everglades restoration and really trying to generate that information and the insight that folks in the positions to make change or to initiate that change, policymakers, water managers, can actually use my results and see them as insightful for locations that few folks have really worked. Not many people have actually gone and done field work in these coastal marshes just because of how remote they are. So while we have a lot of experimental research that is kind of outlining the process of peat collapse and the mechanisms and the drivers, we need to compare it to what's happening in the field. So just hopefully the combination of all this different, all this generation of knowledge and data will actually get more money for us to keep pumping water south.
Great. Marbellis, you want to chime in?
Yeah, just to touch very quickly on that we need to protect all of our small resources, even if it's just one tree, it does make a difference. Our urban areas, if you see the small trees in the streets or in our coastlines, they are protecting us, they are having functioning ecosystem services for us. So help them, maintain them clean, keep them maintained, and you can do it as well. You don't need anyone or any organization to do that.
Great. Ike, did you want to chime in?
Yes. So the importance of my research is in the after the fact, so the management, right? So just like Luke was saying, if we're able to know how we can manage our canals discharges, it's going to go a long way in helping us having to remediate. And so my research is trying to find that optimum range where we are able to send more freshwater delivery to the places that need it, right? So the Everglades, the protected Everglades and the Bay, without the consequences of nutrient loading, right? And so that is where my research really comes into focus, where we have a win-win situation of more fresh water, less pollution in the load.
Great. Lauren, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just say that in general, with problems, environmental problems, I think that a lot of the struggle is sort of providing a backdrop of enough evidence to convince people to affect change and at the policy level or, at the university level. And so I think that's sort of where I see this particular project in the grand scheme of things. It's difficult to really sort of focus on things and like direct, you do this one project and you immediately see this immediate change somewhere else in the policy level. But, you just hope that, especially with these sort of local issues that are happening everywhere, and as they continue to happen more, you can just get more people on your side and make a stronger argument for it at the end of the day.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. So we're running out of time for our Q&A, but I have one last question. Does anyone know how urban wetlands are being factored into long-term sustainability in planning for Miami-Dade? I guess we'll ask our colleagues in Miami-Dade to help us out with that one. and we can share it in our next seminar. All right, so thank you guys very much. That was really inspiring, and you all are doing all amazing work. Thank you very much. So we're going to go to our next. Oh, how did we do poll?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Alyssa. I'm going to launch the second poll now. So you should be seeing your second poll on your screen. This is a 5-question poll. I'll just quickly run through your questions. Again, you have to select all the answers, scroll all the way to the bottom and press submit in order for it to be submitted properly. Number 1 reads, true or false, carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. Number 2 reads, what are the sources of pollution from the land that can enter our waterways? So you have the options of trash, stormwater runoff, fertilizers, and failing septic tanks. Number 3, nutrient pollution can cause algae blooms, which can result in foul smells, reduced water quality, and low dissolved oxygen in water. Nutrient pollution can disrupt businesses, property values, recreational access, and result in hazards to public health and wildlife. Little typo there. That's a true or false question. Number 4 is also true or false. Climate change exacerbates the impacts of nutrient pollution. And the last question, what is one thing citizens can do to reduce nutrient pollution? This is a multiple choice answer. So you can select multiple. You have limited amount of fertilizer applied, promote use of slow release fertilizers to prevent low release of nitrogen, use 0% phosphorus in fertilizer mix, do not apply fertilizers in the summer during heavy rainstorms, or not near waterways or storm drains, or all of the above. So I'll give you guys another minute or two to fill that out. However, we have already 83% voted, so we're moving quickly. I'll just give a few more seconds to see if we can bump it up to 90. Once again, you gotta select at least an answer on all of them and scroll all the way to the bottom and press submit. I'll give you 10 more seconds. All right, and I'm going to end the poll. I will share the results now. So number 1, 100% voted yes, true. Number 2, we have the majority ruled for fertilizers, but also we had a lot of votes for stormwater runoff, failing septic tanks. Number 3, 100% true. Number 4, 100% true. And number 5, majority rules, all of the above. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to stop sharing the results and pass it over to Dr. Jacobson.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. This one. There we go. Okay, my name is Susan Jacobson, and I'm a professor in the Department of Journalism and Media here at FIU. I'm going to show you our site, the Miami Environmental Science Action Network site, misan.miami, and we have a little application that you can take, that you can pull up on your phone and go around your neighborhood and show us the beautiful things, the problematic things, anything that you see that you think that is important to take note of. We're collecting a database of neighborhood environmental observations around Miami. So this little QR code, if you shine your phone at it, it will take you to the website. You can also go into misan.miami/observer. I'm just going to move this over to the side for a sec. So this is here.
You want to give people just a sec to see if they can bring up the...
Yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm going to leave it right here.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I got it.
Okay, so I'm going to leave it right here. And I'm just going to show you while the QR code is up. This is the Misan website. It's at misan.miami, and we have all of our webinars are on the site. So if you miss something, if you want to come back and take a look at it, We have all of our webinars. We have all of our upcoming events are listed. We're having some sea level solutions days coming up where you can go out, we'll train you to go out and take some measurements for the king tide. And some of our other projects that we're doing as well. You can sign up on our Take Action form if you have not done so already, and we will contact you with more information about our events. But what I want to share with you today is the Nissan Observer App. And it's the simple app. Again, you can access it here with this QR code. It's nissan.miami/observer. And what we're asking you to do is to go out into your neighborhood. So you enter where your neighborhood is. And if you see a flower that you like, you can select this. And if you want to take a picture of it, you can click here and it will upload a photo. Or if you see birds, or if you're like, oh, I didn't need to touch that, you can unclick that. If you see, you know, the swales are those grassy areas on the side of the road that is kind of has an indentation where the water collects if there's a lot of rain. If you see something going on there, that's great. If you see some issues that are maybe problematic, like if you see a drain that's clogged, that's really bad. That's going to put water on your street and possibly mess up stuff that's going into the water sources. If you see any flooding, if you see any trash, like a big collection of trash, or if you see something else that we didn't think of, you can take a picture of it, tell us what you saw, and press the big submit button. And we're collecting a database of environmental observations around Miami-Dade County. And even on our main Nissan menu, we have these pictures that we've collected, and someone sent us, oh look, it's compost. Someone sent us their compost. So please take a moment, take some observations of your neighborhood and send them to us. All right, thank you. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay, so any questions?
Oh, there is.
Are Nissan apps developed in-house at FIU? Who would be the contact person for this? So yes, they're developed in-house. We use a couple of tools to make them. We sometimes use a commercial tool called Jotform, and then we modify it. Or we also make them ourselves. So you can contact me if you have some questions or some suggestions. We're very open to feedback.
Awesome. Susan, could you leave your email?
Oh yes,
Awesome.
I will put my email in the chat. All right. Oh, do I put in the chat or the QA? Okay.
Whichever.
Okay.
Look, I
All right.
submitted. Oh, you can't see it.
There we go.
Wait.
Yeah, you're disappearing.
No.
Wetlands.
We believe you. We believe you. Awesome. So I'm going to launch the last poll. This is a 3-question poll, and it's essentially a satisfaction survey. We want to know how we did today. So you should be seeing it on your screen. Once again, I'll repeat. Make sure to answer all the questions. Scroll down and press submit. The first question is, how would you rate today's webinar? I enjoyed it. High 5. There are some aspects I really liked, but not everything. It was okay. Could have been better. Terrible waste of time. I hope not. I do not know. I prefer not to answer. Number 2, I would like to participate in an upcoming citizen science monitoring event. Yes, no, thank you. Not sure. And number 3, do you plan on trying to implement one of the activities you learned about today and record and report using a smartphone or other device? Yes, no, or I plan to implement the activity, but probably will not record it using a smartphone. So I'll give you guys a few more seconds, about 30 more seconds. We're at 60%.
I'm going to sign up to our upcoming citizen science event.
Definitely. You want to talk about it as we...
Excellent.
No, you go ahead, Alyssa.
So we have on October 17th, we have a Sea Level Solutions Day, which is the 4th annual one conducted by FIU's Institute of Environment. And essentially it's a day where us as citizens go out and be scientists, and we get to measure different flood data. So it's during our king tide weekend, which is one of the highest tides of the year. And so scientist teams, I'm sorry, not scientist teams, teams of you guys will go out in threes to different locations where we know that there has been flooding in the past, and you'll collect that data. You're set up with kits. So go ahead and sign up. You can also send us emails if you're interested or have any further questions.
I'll be there.
I'll be there too.
Yay.
We'll all be there so you can meet us.
Super. Well, thanks so much to our panelists. You guys are a bunch of rock stars, and we're really looking forward to see the future of your work and how it develops. And thank you so much for your time. I'm sure everyone really enjoyed it. So take care, everyone. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany.
Nick, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
So I was thinking about the pharmaceuticals and the fish.
Mhm.
So like, do the hospitals, do they have a special way of dealing with the drugs that they probably generate before it goes to the water?
Yeah, so the hospitals, hold on, I just got distracted here by this thing popping up there. Yeah, so as far as like the hospitals, their wastewater and where it ends up in their treatment, is that the main gist of your question there?
Yeah.
Yeah, specifically, each hospital, I'm not like specific ones currently aware, but like as of now looking into that, but ultimately the waste would end up in the same process. But I think also you're likely looking into what particular regulations they might have that would be different than others when they put it in there. They, to my knowledge, don't have a different method of removing any waste aside from what would be dependent on just the normal wastewater treatment. But there's still more than I need to do myself to look into that thought, because it's a very good point. You know, wouldn't hospitals be one of the larger contributors to pharmaceuticals and wastewater? And it's interesting, you know, I'm sure you're well aware, like looking into the wastewater treatment, it's a fun little rabbit hole to fall into and go through there, which I'm like currently doing with an undergrad in our lab, which is pretty fun.
Cool.
Yeah. Thank you for your question. That's a good like thought right there that I haven't had.
Well, you know, Mount Sinai is right on the beach, right? So.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Just saying.
Oh, man.
All right, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hold people up.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for your
Thank
presentations. Really
you.
inspiring.
If you have additional questions, you're welcome to send us an email and we'll be happy to answer them for you. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.